Hello and welcome back to the podcast. So my internet's down, so I'm on the phone view once again. But today we're going to be talking about, what is it, Chapter 7?
It is Chapter 7, yes.
So you want to kick things off?
Oh, did we already do the countdown?
No, so I don't know how to do the countdown on the phone app.
Okay.
We're live.
Yeah, I'm trying to verify that we're actually going live.
We're live. We are officially live. Just
Oh, yeah, look at that. All right.
Hopefully my internet will come back up soon, and I can switch to my desktop.
Yeah, hey, don't try this at home, folks. We're professionals here, right? Killing it. Okay, so yeah, I got it. Yeah, lesson 7. It's I didn't really rehearse a good intro for this one. So if you've noticed, we've been off for a couple of weeks. Yeah, I'm out of practice, man. It's been we had 2 weeks off. Maybe it was 3. I don't remember.
That's true.
So here in a minute, I'm going to share my screen, but this is a long course. And there's, unlike the other segments, there's precious little that is either optional, like declared optional, or that you can kind of skip through. There's some ways to kind of be corny about it, which we'll get into. But it's the one that you can't skim through this course. This is probably going to be what you want to use to do the bulk of your project. And most of the few people that I have seen publish their projects, it's getting to be more, which is great. But the few people that I've seen, they've used R almost exclusively. And I haven't seen anyone who's kind of tried to do it in Excel or Google Sheets, or sort of shoehorn it through SQL and then into something else for the presentation, maybe Tableau. Pretty much everyone seems to be doing their whole project in R, which is quite possible. And hopefully next week, if we can get through through lesson 8, we can talk through that. I'm about halfway through lesson 8 right now. But this is one you really want to spend some time on. So if you want to bring up the screen.
Okay. Yeah.
Can you not do that?
I can do that. I'm just having to figure this out.
Yeah.
I'm glad that the power went out in a previous episode, so I now have this backup continue.
Oh yeah, you've got the step action drill down. Okay, so here's our syllabus screen, and you can see going through it already. It's sizable. Okay, high rating, well deserved. It's a very good course. Really only a couple of minor gripes with this one. You can see right there. 37 hours, and it is every bit of that. And honestly, if you take it seriously, you can take quite a bit more than 37 hours to do this course, and you would be getting good use out of your time. That there's no fluff in it. It's just valuable content from start to finish. And the thing is, once you're done, this course kind of leaves you hungry for more. The Tableau course in lesson 6 kind of did that, just because there was very little Tableau in it. It was only about a quarter of the time. This course is R start to finish. And at the end of that 37 hours, you're just sitting there going, at this point, you've reached that level of cognizance where what you really know is the depth and breadth of what you don't know. And it leaves you kind of wanting to develop your skills further. To its credit, the course gives you a lot of good links that show you exactly where you can go to start doing that. And most of them are free assets. Consists of 5 weeks, and there's no, even with the 5 weeks, there are no light ones. All of them are heavy content, lots of hands-on. You're coding, you're watching videos, you're reading, but it's all got depth to it. And with the readings, what we're going to see is there's a whole lot of external links, and that's where you can build more knowledge and more of that time, is by going to those external links and those reading assets that they link you to. And so in 5 weeks, you're going through programming and data analytics. This one was a bit of a misnomer. It's kind of, you're not really doing a lot of data analytics there. It's really just kind of an intro week. and how to get your systems up and running and the whatever downloads you need. Week 2, they introduce you. They're going to start having you work in RStudio. There's 2 options for that, which we'll get into. Week 3, that's where you're really getting into some data analysis. You're going to get into cleaning. You're going to get into sorting and filtering. Basically, all of the things that you've gone through in the course that if you can do it in SQL, if you can do it in Excel or Google Sheets, you can also do it in R. And honestly, most of the stuff that you can do in Tableau, you can also do in R. And then speaking of Tableau, week 4, you're getting into visualizations using ggplot2, and then tweaking those visualizations with some aesthetics and annotations to make them clearer and easier to read. That one really gets into when you reach the end of that 4th week, you're just going to be like, I need more. I need to know how to make better visualizations, because it really is very easy. It's not significantly more difficult than using Tableau, using ggplot2, and really it's just a couple lines of code, and then you've got a good plot, you've got some color, you've got some labels and on it, and really it's something you just look at it, you say, that took me 5-10 minutes to learn, and I can put that in a presentation right now. And then week 5 is crucial for going forward into the project, because that is documentation and reports. So they're going to teach you how to use R Markdown. They teach you a little bit of how to export what you've got into a portfolio site. They really kind of touch on that sort of sprinkled throughout the course. But if there's any gripe on content, I suppose I wouldn't have minded having a bit more of that, because at this point I'm still a little fuzzy on how you get that code and those products into other sites. I know there's plenty of places. Alex talks about it all the time, and Luke Bruce and all of our kind of all-star panel of guests talk about how to use GitHub Pages, Wix, and all these other assets to display what you've learned. But those are the 5 weeks that you've got, and you can see it on the time: 8 hours, 9 hours, 7 hours. There's no duck week. Everything builds, and everything is kind of solid knowledge.
All right,
do we have any questions or funny comments?
We've been neglecting our chat. So Eric Sims got a question. Can you see it?
Yeah.
So I guess for anyone who's just listening, Eric Sims asked, does this course use
dplyr?
Yeah. Or
there is
done in base R.
There is a mention of dplyr in this course. It doesn't, and Eric, that's absolutely something that you kind of get a mention of it. And I know from doing part of Matt Dancho's data science with R course that dplyr is an awesome package. You get no hands-on with it. They just didn't. You can see 37 hours they went through. They really didn't even go through tidyr very much. You're really just using base R, ggplot2 for the viz. They get with the cleaning, they get into skimmer, janitor, and here. But really, there's not a ton of different packages that they use. They really just get into the basics to get you forward into the project. But yeah, I know dplyr is awesome, and I can't wait to get back to working on Matt's course to work in that.
All right, so we got this is a long one. It's also hard for me to read on this phone. Okay, here we go.
Shruti.
I can read it better now. So Shruti is asking, I'm way behind. I don't know how Albert is doing this course. And also, well, so you're not doing the internship now, are you?
No, that ended a couple of weeks ago.
But anyways, the whole question is, do you have any tips on time management?
I'm terrible. Well, okay, I won't say that. I used to be terrible with time management. Now I would call myself mediocre at time management. A genius at time management is our good friend, Mr. Kenji. And he actually does a lot of videos. Like one of his major themes is time management and kind of mindfulness. He reads a lot of books on it. He's kind of mildly obsessed with it. So Shruti, I highly recommend you go check out Ken's channel, where he talks extensively about how he organizes his life, what platforms he uses, what books he reads for mindset. I've got a lot of good lessons from Ken.
Okay, so we got a question from Gerson here. Did
Yep.
you have prior experience in R before taking the course?
The only prior experience I had in R, Gerson, was doing, like I said, I got through about a quarter of Matt Dancho's course before unfortunately, I switched to this because it coincided better with my internship. So I really didn't like switching off of that course because Matt's course is intense. And it's something where I've tried to kind of go back and get some time with it going back. And I paused about a quarter of the way through, and it's tough to get back into it because it's quite immersive. And that's what I love about it. It seems like all of Matt's courses are that way. But yeah, that was my initial go at R, was doing Matt Dancho's R for Data Science course. So, but that's all I had. Months and months and months ago, I did some intro to Python work. So I did a couple of LinkedIn learning classes, and I had a subscription to Data Camp that I was using to learn Python. I then, on the recommendation of a mentor, he said, hey, you'd be doing yourself some favors if you switch and learn SQL better first and then switch to a coding language. I went to SQL, and then in the meantime, kind of got the R course, fell in love with R, and so I switched off of Python for reasons that were more platform based than, I don't hate Python. I like to kind of poke the bear with the Python aficionados like Avery Smith and Tom Ives. I just think it's funny because they're just so ardent in their love for Python and their insistence that Python is supreme. And so we'll actually talk about Google addresses the Python R debate early in the course, actually.
Okay, so I'm kind of curious as to your experience of Tableau versus R. You said that R is surprisingly easy to use, like it's just a couple of lines of code for a lot of it.
Yes.
Wow.
So, I mean, Tableau is at its base function. I think Tableau is designed for, like, literally a child can kind of pick up a mouse and start dragging things over. Obviously, people can create just absolute wizardry in Tableau, and that takes years of experience and tons of reps. But to put, an X and Y plot and get a regression line, it's 3 clicks of a mouse, kind of drag this pill from one side to the other. Yes, Matt, to answer that question, yes, he is definitely just launching in bed. It's noon, and our host has just gotten himself out of bed. Yeah, or like sat up in bed, I should say.
Before we hit live stream, so my phone was on 6% battery because I'm a maniac apparently. So I'm having to charge my phone, which is by my bed. So yep, you get to see my nice bed frame here.
It's good to see you invested in quality furniture, though.
Yeah, I've got a whole matching set in this bedroom. Yeah. So let's see. Here we go. I love that Eric Sims is here. We need to have you on. Okay, so Eric is saying describing a love of Python as ardent is a great subtle dig.
Yeah, Eric, I mean, it just seems like the people that love Python kind of love it to an exclusive level. And I really like to make fun of Tom Ives because Tom Ives absolutely, he likes to joke about that. Really, he absolutely believes that Python has its uses, R has its own uses. He prefers Python. Obviously, look, I prefer using R for the purposes for which I use code, which is data analysis and statistics. Well, no kidding. That's what R was designed to do. Now, R can do lots of other things because people have designed packages to adapt it. Python is obviously a much more kind of widely usable and more applicable code to other things. But for hey, we're called How to Get an Analytics Job. For analytics, I believe, in my limited experience, that R is the superior language. So, yeah, delighted to continue the debate, maybe somewhere else because we'll be here all day. But
so yes, we're streaming on both YouTube and LinkedIn right now, which Okay, I wanted to talk to you. This side tangent.
Ooh.
Isn't Avery doing it on Instagram too? I don't know. Are people
His live stream?
Yeah.
He may be. Maybe he's doing like the there's a dude named Adam Bratz. He's an analytics guy as well, and he does some like work in the veteran space. He does live streams that I think are on like 6 different platforms. And to include ones that I didn't even know were streaming platforms until I think he live streams simultaneously on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Snapchat. Can you live stream on Snapchat? He's on Instagram as well. Like, it's ridiculous how many, and he gets like, his aggregate numbers are off the chain because, you know, I'll go on one of his live streams on LinkedIn. He has like 8 people in there. And if you check YouTube, you know, it's like 10 or 12. But then he's like, at the end of the live stream, he's like, we had 250 people tune in or some other ridiculous number. And it's like, oh yeah, when you tally up everyone that was on Instagram and Twitch and all these other, yeah, I still don't understand how that stuff works. But
so yeah, if you guys are in the live chat watching, do you prefer us live streaming? Because we're mainly using YouTube as the main thing, and then LinkedIn's kind of a secondary. We could expand to Twitch. I think that might be a smart move, and maybe Instagram. I don't know. Avery's got some really really high quality marketing, which is
yeah, I mean, we've got messages coming in from LinkedIn. It's working. You probably can't see that. It's all shiny. Okay. My ring light is reflecting off my phone screen, but yeah, I just checked LinkedIn on my phone. It's live streaming. So if you prefer that, yes, yeah, Stoney, we are using StreamYard.
Okay, so Stoney is saying, I use both Python and R most often for the libraries and functions that I need. In the past, stats model in Python did not have MICE multiple imputation functions that was released, so I used R. I don't know what any of that means. You know what that means, Al?
No clue.
Well, I love that we have some people who are super technical and super savvy keeping us honest here.
That's why we need to keep prodding Molly to come back on the show. Be like, be the data scientist. Come here, tell us what these things mean.
That's true. She's learning so much right now, which is awesome.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. So just before we start delving into the weeks and getting into specific topics. So a couple of things to remember about this lesson. So RStudio, they give you the option in here to use, you can either use the RStudio cloud version, or you can use no scam likely. I don't want to talk to you. I should probably turn the ringer off. You can either use the RStudio cloud version, which is a lot easier for most of the things in this course, or you can use RStudio desktop. I highly recommend that you get both of them because there's certain things in the course where it's easier to use the cloud, and there's certain things where it's easier to use the desktop. Most of the hands-on exercises, you're going to want to use the cloud because it's just simpler. You can click straight through, and the files that you have are already loaded up. You just click through the file directory and bring up the lesson that you need, and it walks you through. If you're using the desktop version, there's an extra, you have to go download the files and pull them in, and it's kind of a bit more of a pain. I personally like to have the desktop version on all my computers just because you're not at the mercy of the interwebs, which obviously are not terribly reliable for all of us right now. And it's just easier to be able to pull up that window and work in that. Yeah, trying to read Stoney's comments in real time. I probably shouldn't do that. I'll let you do that. So anyway, I recommend they will walk you through how to access RStudio Cloud. You have to get an account, and it's free. You get into the RStudio, what they call the sandbox, which, like the cloud assets for the earlier courses, all of it is free. RStudio Cloud, I don't think, is even on a metered thing. The BigQuery you eventually have to pay for. But it's very easy to use. There are some glitches here and there, so I'll warn you about that going in. This course needs a little bit of cleanup. There are some files that are kind of missing or don't work. There are some things where if you type your code in, even though it's perfect, it won't run. And then if you run their demo, then it works fine. So I think there's some kind of quality control issues with this course. And that was the first time I saw that throughout the whole Google course. So little disappointing on that. There's some times it pops up at some really inopportune moments, which I'll get into. It's very easy to kind of skip reps on this one. You can do the exercises along with the videos. It's not quite as simple as it was in the SQL course. We got echo. I'm terribly sorry. You still hear me?
I'm back in the studio space now. Sorry. I don't know what happened with that echo thing. That was weird. I guess both the mic was off. All right. I'm back. No longer in bed. Sorry. I totally interrupted everything.
Well,
Abe had a question.
Nice of you to join us. Welcome to work.
Abe had a question. So he was asking, so the few lines of code to make a viz isn't hard? Or the first few lines?
No, not at all. I mean, like a basic, just, x-axis, y-axis scatter plot, super easy. It's, literally like 1 or 2 lines of code. And that includes install ggplot2, library ggplot2. Like it's 1 line of code to do a simple plot. And then you can start, it gets more complex when you say, hey, I want a regression line. I want I want a confidence interval, which they don't really get into here. I want squares instead of dots. And then if you want to tile out different plots, that's when the code starts building. But really everything they cover in this course is extremely simple.
Cool. That's awesome.
So just what I recommend is, once again, go through the videos, do the exercises, as the instructor here is Carrie, who is amazing. But as she's talking through them, she has a very good kind of precise way of dictating these things. They invite you to do the exercises along with them. It's a little more difficult. Like sometimes you have to go hunt down a file. It's just, like I said, there's some kind of glitches there, and it's not optimized like it was when you're doing the BigQuery alongside the SQL instruction. That was optimized. That was very easy to use. This one's you got to kind of do a little work on your own, but I recommend that you do that. In order to enable that, once again, just like we did with BigQuery, highly recommend either 2 display devices. I have a second monitor that I'm using right now and that I use to get through this course. If you want to use a pad in your laptop or your phone in a pinch, although I hate having the small screen, but 2 monitors just really works well for me, because you can have the course running on one and the instructor talking, or you can be looking at your instructions for what you're doing, and then your work is going on another monitor. Now, once you're doing the hands-on activities, you will have the instructions and your code in 2 different panes, or you can, in our studio. So it's not really necessary, but I really enjoy having the chat at the same time. The other thing is you can pull up, there's tons of cheat sheets and external references in this course. You can pull up your ggplot2 cheat sheet and have that up for reference as you're working on another monitor. It just makes it a whole lot easier. There is a ton of external reading. I touched on it in this. It is extremely valuable, and you'll see a lot of the reading portions of this course. It'll say reading 10 minutes, and you pull it up and it's literally like 1 paragraph, and you're like, that won't take me 30 seconds to read. But what it has is 3 links to external sources. So the 10 minutes, I think, is just kind of a baseline measurement. It'll take you 30 seconds to read what's on the screen, but then you could sit there for hours reading the links that they send you to if you really want to learn stuff. So I highly recommend having an entire folder just for this course. There's a ton of cheat sheets that you should download the PDFs and keep those for your own reference, and print if you prefer having hard copies in your hands. And then the external links, recommend saving all of those into a favorites folder specifically for this R course, because there's a ton of them and they're very useful.
Sweet. Okay.
All right.
So we
now that you unshared the screen, we're ready to go to the screen. But who's got a question?
I was about to say, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to gatekeep you of all right, we're here, not looking at it when we're doing the Q&A. All right, so we had Alexander ask, "What's your general view of the courses up to this level?"
It really varies. I kind of the visualization course, lesson 6. I mean, I kind of gave it a beating because to me it just wasn't technical enough. It was far too high level for the kind of person that's taking this course. I really felt they spent way too much time on like the 6 concepts of an effective visualization and the 5 steps to embedding a graph, and that, you know, it was way too much kind of PowerPointery and high level thoughts, and not nearly enough. Here's how you make a scatter plot in Tableau. Click, 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 you know. So it was, that one to me was not terribly effective. I don't feel like I retained a lot from it.
Well, it sounds like a theory versus an application-based class.
It absolutely is. But it was jarring that it was like in the middle end of the course, because you'd just gone through lessons 3, 4, and 5, which were just building technical skills and kind of ramping down the theory. And so lesson 5 was just a ton of SQL work. And it was probably, 80% technical work and 20% tops of the theory and the application in the business domain. They kind of crammed a lot of that early on. Lesson 6 was jarring because it was a ton of theory and business domain and kind of high level thoughts. And just at the end of that, it's like, what can I do in Tableau now? If I'd never seen Tableau before, what could I do now that I couldn't do before? Very little. Honestly, at the end of this R course devotes 1 week to visualization. I probably retained more on creating visualizations in R from this course than I did from the entire visualization course teaching Tableau.
Oh, wow.
So, it just wasn't effective for me. Like I said, one of the things to keep in mind is it's very heavy on theory early on, as it kind of needs to be. And then the technical part ramps up with the exception of the visualization course. Really enjoyed those middle courses, the technical courses. The early courses were great too. It's just there was kind of a lot of fluff in there that, some of it didn't, wasn't effective for me. I didn't retain it super well.
Okay, so Gerson wants to know, which ones would you recommend additional reading or adding in, a supplementary course?
Yeah, I would say so. Not necessarily in this order, because I don't know that if you're going for kind of general data analytics goodness, I would say it's more important for you to have a grasp on the spreadsheet applications and SQL than it is to know a visualization software, because you can do visualizations in a lot of different things. BI platform. But as far as how much you get, yeah, absolutely. If at the end of this course, if I'd never seen any of these programs before, I would really feel like I was hurting for Tableau knowledge. They really do a pretty good job of getting you through the beginner levels of SQL and get you kind of ready for some intermediate work. And they just barely touch on some of the intermediate concepts in SQL. Excel and Google Sheets, the work's pretty good. I mean, you get a great foundational level of how to use spreadsheets in their applications. Other than that, R, it's a great foundational level for R. And like I said, at the end of the R course, you're left wanting more, but not because you don't know Jack. It's because, it just gives you enough where you're like, hey, in the words of Obi-Wan, you've taken your first steps into a larger world. So you really kind of want more after that.
Uh-oh. So we have some breaking news coming into the podcast.
Uh-oh.
Oh, no. This emergency message here. So we're going to have to shut down our Friday live stream because Abe's going to be in a lazy river float in Austin. Thanks for letting us know. I appreciate the proactive communication.
Living in coastal North Carolina, I'm not jealous of too many people, but I'm mildly jealous of that. I might have to go to the beach on Friday just to match Abe's shenanigans.
That's hilarious. Okay. All right. So we got a serious question now. Natika is asking, why are there so much hype about Python versus R?
Because I think just because the people that love Python and, you know, are like fervent, ardent users of Python, I know Sims loves that word. They just seem to be such, you know, they're just so kind of
because they're nerds
about it. You know, they need you to believe that Python is better. Like it's not enough that they like it more. It's offensive to them that anybody doesn't think that. Yeah, because nerds. Exactly. You ever hear the old joke that you know, an atheist, a vegan, and a CrossFitter walked into a bar, and I knew because within 30 seconds they told everyone there. I mean,
yeah.
A Python user is akin to those atheist, vegan, CrossFitters, Python users. Like they need you to know that they're right.
Well, I mean, they're also like they're all their eggs are in one basket too. So if one of those wins that like technology arms race, like because I started off as a Tableau specialist. That's how I like built my personal brand and my consulting agency. But I'm realizing now that like that is such a narrow field to where if analytics expert is data governance, you know, analysis, presentation, then actually consulting. I mean, it's just a wider umbrella. But so Stoney is saying, this is a common argument between technologies. Do not allow people to falsely narrow the frame. A or B, which one? How about A when is good, B when good, or C? So, okay, so choose your tool. What tool is the most effective for this situation is what he's saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the funny thing is every R user that I've ever met, like the people that really enjoy and use R on a daily basis, will acknowledge that. Like there's nobody out there like, R is the superior tool, Python is garbage. But there are plenty of people saying the opposite. So whatever. I like annoying them. Most of them are good-hearted about it. I've never met anyone that was like wanted to fight me over, you know, my insults to Python. I just think it's funny.
Okay. All right. So we got some more so somebody, you got a fanboy.
Alec Chilka, what's up, brother? Yeah, I tossed him an invite. I haven't had him around in a while, but yeah, when I was doing invites for this, I did an event for this last night, and then threw out invites and just kind of went through the old. I had an old Excel spreadsheet when I was keeping track of who came in and chatted in YouTube. So Alec was there all the time in the early days of this season.
I'm doing that manually. Can we bulk do that, or is that just like a copy and paste?
I found a couple of shortcuts. We'll talk offline.
Okay.
It's tough.
Okay. Yeah. I think they've done that, but that's not a design flaw. I think
they
want to make it.
You've got to. I tried to look up how to web scrape it, and there are ways, but it's not super easy.
Okay.
So I couldn't quite get to where I could. Now, if you web scrape it, then you can just automate it. Which I will say, as far as I can tell, Python's better for web scraping. So we'll give you that one. Python people.
Okay, so we got somebody new. So I don't know.
Gloomy phone.
Yeah. So feel free to tell us your real name, and we can like address you. You know how you normally are addressed. So they're asking, which is a slight pivot, although I mean not really. Like this, I feel like getting this certification could help.
Do you mean how I got my internship, or how to get one?
I think it's a general one, but let's go specific with you and then break it into maybe some general like guiding themes.
Yeah. So I came through a specific program for the military. You don't have to serve 2 decades like I did, but yeah, there were plenty of people doing SkillBridge at Google that had done. I don't know if we had anyone that did like 1 enlistment and then was there, but we had some people that had been in the military for 8 or 10 years and were at Google. So it's called SkillBridge. It's a specific thing for military veterans that are transitioning. But yeah, how to get an internship at Google? I would Nikita Gupta. I would definitely look up Nikita Gupta and FangPath, and that she's probably your best bet to figure that out.
Wait, but was this specifically for Google or just? I thought it was just like generally, how do you get an internship?
Oh, how do you get an internship? Yeah, I would just say like target a few companies and go ask.
Yeah, I mean,
See what their
honestly,
application process is.
the way that I got so I had two different ways that I got internships during so I did 0 internships in my undergrad program, which was part of the reason why I had a quarter life crisis and had to like go back to grad school and get a master's degree and pivot my whole career. The first one was just applying directly. So like if you're at university, so I was at UNCG for my master's program. There's this thing called like Spartan Link, where companies that partner, that have relationships, strong ties with that university, put postings on their server that they're looking directly for UNCG students. For example, Volvo Trucks is one of the big companies in Greensboro. There's a pipeline from the MBA program directly to Volvo Trucks. Like a lot of people, and you'll see that with a lot of organizations, a lot of educational, higher education institutions. It's like they're a pipeline for people, and they build relationships. The other one was through referral. So the girl, my friend Allie, who was a year ahead of me in my MBA program, had an internship, and then her managers asked her, "Hey, can you find your replacement?" Because she was about to graduate and get a full-time job. So she then passed that on to me. So I would say those are two really solid strategies. I mean, the first one's obvious, just apply.
Yeah.
But I mean, maybe it's a little bit nuanced of like they're
internal referrals, the best way to go for that. You know, any job you want, internal referrals the way to go. Right.
Yeah. Oh, this is interesting. I wonder if Abe's got a story behind this. And I love how he's yelling at us.
Yeah.
It's all caps. Create your own internship.
So I used to recruit for the Marine Corps.
That's true. Well, I mean, so
just yell and berate people until they sign a contract.
Well, I believe Abe has an internship with his school doing financial analysis for them, and maybe that's what he did. I don't know. I'd love if
he did. I mean, he's got a full-time job now. But
oh, okay. Oh, interesting. So this is debatable. Do free projects? I don't know about that.
Does he mean projects like unpaid projects or free projects like unguided?
Well, okay, because I see it as a red flag. I have had companies reach out to me saying, "Hey, we just want to test you out, and will you solve this problem for us for free, and then we'll hire you." And I think that is a horrible precedent to set in a relationship, because it's setting poor boundaries on my end of like, yeah, you don't have to respect my time. Like, yeah, I'm just so grateful for any opportunity you throw at me that I'll do free work. Now, if you're saying free work, like, for example, we're talking with Nicholas from the Cape Fear Collective, like that's philanthropic work, and that's for like a good cause. But if you're doing free work that someone is then taking and monetizing, that's pretty sketchy and shaky from my perspective.
Yeah, I wish I remembered which interview it was. I watched a podcast. It was a female guest, but I can't remember who it was. Actually, it might have been something Makiko said. Anyway, I just remember it was a female that said it. But they're answering a question, which is saying she identified a mentor type person. I don't know if didn't really establish a mentorship relationship, first of all, but, connected with someone, started talking to them, and then said, and this was a kind of a busy professional, and whoever was telling the story was, student or aspiring data analyst or what have you. And the question she asked was just masterful. And what she said was, do you have any projects that you don't have time to get to? What do you have that's on your back burner that's just been there forever? And can I help with that or take that over? And that to me was just amazing. I mean, what an approach, what person doesn't have, if you've got a full-time job, you've always got 3 or 4 things that you're like, man, in a perfect world, I would get to this. And this would organize things or make my life easier or automate this process or you name it. But It's just that's going to take, 8 hours of uninterrupted work, and I'm just never going to get that. So it's just kind of going to sit in the bottom of a file drawer forever. If you had someone coming in that was like, hey, as long as I can, report this and have it, it can't be like PII or something like that, or proprietary information, but, can you give me something that I can turn into a project that would be valuable to you, and the experience is valuable to me? That to me is not free, and that's not a company that you're saying, I'm interning for you. That's a person that you've identified that can teach you something. And then if you say, hey, here's something that you need done, that I can do, and then we're both going to benefit from it. To me, that's not, they're giving you something free. You're also giving them something free, but does that make sense? That doesn't establish a, I'm your slave relationship. It's, and you're not doing it for a company, you're doing it for an individual.
Yeah. I think that if you set boundaries, like if there's an equal exchange of value of saying, all right, I'll do this project for you if I get to outline it in my bio or my portfolio or my resume, and then also I'll get an endorsement from you. So like there needs to be, because what I'm afraid is going to happen is that you're going to do all this free work and they're just going to take advantage of you, and you're going to get nothing. And they're just going to use you up. When they're done with you, discard you, and then move on. There's like this whole lane of YouTubers that are like the fake gurus. I saw there's this one company that was like, basically they built their whole company off of like free intern labor, and it's just it's pretty gross. And I don't know. I feel like maybe that's like a paternal instinct of like, don't get caught in this trap. It's going to just demoralize you, and also it's going to make you feel even worse than before you got into it. Cause then you're going to say, all right, well, maybe I'm not made, I can't make it in this space, or I'm not, built out or cut out for this.
Yeah.
So portfolio projects is another great way of, which is kind of similar to like the doing nonprofit work and then being able to post that publicly on your portfolio, like your Tableau public portfolio, for example, is great. I would say that's a great strategy. Let's see. Sorry, we went on a tangent there.
Yeah. Well, that should help us pivot back, because this course will set you up for a portfolio project should you choose to do it, and you should.
Smooth.
Okay, so here we are. Yeah. Now that we've had the world's most awkward segue, so we're into week one finally. 44 minutes into the live stream. We're actually delving into content here. Okay, so can you guys hear that? You can never hear it.
No, you got to click enable audio.
We've never, don't worry about it. It'll probably just be distracting. Anyway, this is Carrie, as you can read on the screen. She is actually a big wig. Like the last two, they really saved the kind of big guns. She is actually kind of highly placed at Google, and the Bob Ross guy last week doing the visualization course. They're important people at Google. So they did not, they really, all the instructors for this course are serious Googlers with some awesome technical chops. They're not just people there to read the teleprompter. But anyway, if you try and tag Carrie on something on LinkedIn, she has it set to where you can't tag her. So anyway, I've noticed a lot of people in their kind of, look at me speech when they post their certificate, they try and tag all the instructors. Carrie, you cannot tag. Sally Kim, you cannot tag either. So I think there might be one other. But anyway, it's just funny to see, like, you have all the hyperlinks of the people's profiles, and then Carrie and Sally's names are up there, and they don't want people linking them. There's weird people on the internet, so I don't blame them. But anyway, Carrie's awesome, great narrator, great instructor. So a couple things. Here's the reading. They right off the bat. This is week one, day one, R versus Python debate, and they just go through. Look, R is a language that was designed to do data analysis and statistical analysis. Python is a general coding and programming language. Python can do in somehow, some way, all of the things that R can do. If you are doing data analysis and statistical analysis, if you put the code for R and Python side by side, the code for R is like one line or half a line, and the code for Python is a freaking paragraph. There's plenty of like funny memes out there. They're hilarious because, again, I love annoying Python fans, but you know, if your business is data analysis, I would suggest that R is the better tool for you. If you are then going to progress onto machine learning and artificial intelligence and all sorts of wacky stuff, by all means, master Python now. It will probably be more useful to you when you get into that arena. If you're here and you're interested in how to get an analytics job, I would suggest that you start with R at least. And my man Dave Langer will say, you can probably just stick with R forever and you'll be fine. I'm pretty sure Dave Langer does plenty of machine learning and artificial intelligence with R, and he seems to be doing just fine for himself. And then they link to plenty of other places where the debate just rages. You know, it's just one of those things the internet is never going to sort out. They're always going to be mad at each other until some language comes along and replaces both of these fine languages. Okay. Into segment 2, it's hard to call these days because this is week 1 and you only have 3 segments. So, but anyway, into segment 2, this reading here and then this one right here. So these will actually probably take you more than 10 minutes unless you're just a speed reader. But look at all of these links here. Ways to learn about programming. They go into what do you want to do and what languages are most useful for that, and where can you read more about that. If you want to be a data analyst, like you're watching this channel, here's what you can do with R and where you can learn about it. Here's where you can do with Python, where you can learn about it. Then it goes into, do you want to be a web designer, mobile app developer, a web app developer, game developer, all of these, and it takes you through kind of the primary languages for those functions. So that is a super useful kind of hub there to get a ton of knowledge about different programming language, none of which are covered in this course. But Coursera, Udemy, LinkedIn Learning can teach you all about all of them. This one here, this reading I really love because a lot of the discussion questions kind of get into like comparing different functions, and it gets a bit awkward. Like it seems like a lot of times they just put discussion questions in there just to have them. But you'll see a ton of discussion questions. It's like, compare the visualization in R to the visualization in Tableau, which to me is just, it's not useful. Writing about that, other than just writing is always useful and good practice. So I recommend you still do the discussion questions. It's just here towards the end of the course, they get a bit clunky and weird. But here in this reading, they compare, you know, what can you do with spreadsheets? What can you do with SQL? And what can you do with R? And then, you know, how effective each of them is for each of these functions. So primary advantage, what data sets does it work best with, formulas and functions. And it shows that they really have more in common for our purposes in data analysis than there are differences. They can do a ton of the same things. So you get through that, and then this third segment, hands-on activities, which one we're going to do. Okay, so this is where you're going to start downloading and getting your assets in order. Okay, so this one right here, you're going to get your, well, I'm not giving you a peek behind the curtain here. This is where you sign up and they walk you through the steps of getting an RStudio Cloud account. And then right after that, it says optional. Again, I recommend this. How to download RStudio Desktop. It's free. It's free forever if you're doing the kind of easy individual version. And I recommend both. And this one here is when to use RStudio and what you should do with it. Now you can download just base R, which you know is like, it's like a DOS window. You're just coding from the command line, and there's no help, there's no nothing. RStudio will show you here in a second. There's just a ton of things you can do with it that make it easier to use R. But if you're just a master coder and you just want to crank away, You can just, the R window. Now, to use RStudio, you have to download R in the first place, and then RStudio works with that. All right, so we're going to go to week 2, and then we'll dig into showing you some of these concepts. What we got? Any questions on week 1?
So, okay, this was an interesting comment from Allison. She said the R course does not properly prepare you for case study. Oh, also, I don't have a hard stop anymore. My class has been moved to Thursday at 1:30. Yeah. So, because I feel like we're a little bit behind.
Yeah, no worries.
So, what do you think?
I disagree. And I've gone through. So, there's a few different ways to attack the case study. Now we're kind of leaning into next week, but we might as well kind of go with it now. There is, I think they call it track 1, track 2. Track 2 is basically just free form. They're going to give you a basic framework of analysis, which is just a rehash, an outline of the whole course up to this point. And they just say, hey, go find a data set. Here's some places to find data sets. Do the analysis that you want to do. It's a very unguided thing. Track 1 is a guided project, and they have 2 different data sets you can work with and 2 different kind of sets of objectives, background, business domain. There's one that deals with rental bicycles, and that seems to be the one that most people use, maybe because it's just the first one that's listed and introduced. And then there's one that deals with like a fitness, like a Fitbit app. And there are different questions with them. I have seen people do some very elementary analysis with it. They are quite guided projects. You can go through and simply fill in the blanks of everything they show you in the outline of the project, and just answer the very simple questions. And for some of the stuff, like some of the plots, I mean, they give you a step action on how to, like what to put in your X and Y axis. So yeah, Allison, I'd be interested to know why you think that, because I mean, I think it, unless you just take time off or something, or you just don't internalize the concepts they introduce. I absolutely think that if you complete this course and you do all the exercises and everything, you may need a quick refresher to come back and remember some of the things that you learned. But if you learn the concepts presented in this R course, I think you're quite well set up for the project. There may be things that you go through if you use your own data set. There may be something, if you want to go in and say, I want to do predictive analysis. I want, a regression line or a time series. I want a confidence interval. If you want to do stuff like that, hey, they don't teach you that in this course. But if you go through track 1 in the guided projects, they absolutely give you everything you need.
Cool. All right, let's hop back to it.
Yeah. So I've got notes written down stuck to the wall here, and I'm trying to remember which video I was talking about. So not that one. Hey, let's just play it and see. Okay, so here, this video, you start working in RStudio. So this one is super useful. And again, I recommend that you just follow along with Carrie and do these exercises, because that just gets you at least one extra rep on every concept. And then, maybe that problem that, people aren't retaining the knowledge. If you do it twice and you do kind of a crawl, walk, run, and so your crawl phase is just doing it side by side along with Carrie. You're looking over, she's teaching you, type out this line, type out this line. You can't cut and paste, obviously, because it's on a video. But, that makes it very easy, and it's very quick to see, okay, I typed this in and I got an error message and she didn't. Hit pause, figure out what you did wrong. Like I said, there are some glitches there, so you may not necessarily be wrong. But anyway, I really think this is your first chance to pull up RStudio in one form or another and just follow along. Most of the exercises that Carrie does in the videos she's not pulling up data sets that you need to download. And that's where you start getting into some difficulties. It does happen later. But first off, I mean, she's just pulling like Polymer Penguins. She works with a ton. Polymer Penguins is in the Tidyverse. It's, you know, it's included with RStudio, and you pull that up and you start working along with her on beak lengths and flipper size and stuff like that in the different species. So yeah, that's super easy. Do it along with the video. Then they usually follow it up with readings. And then most of these practice quizzes are actually hands-on activities. So basic programming concepts, she starts talking about programming fundamentals. So just basic commands. Then you go into the reading, it'll reinforce vectors and lists, dates and times, which get super tricky if you don't have them formatted consistently or properly. And then it goes into a reading. Other data structures, basically just frames. And then it'll start talking about tibbles as well, which is, you know, a smaller and simpler and more temporary data frame that doesn't get saved. And then let me delve into this one. Yeah, that's a multiple choice quiz. Okay. So anyway, that stuff is fairly simple. And then I think I was going to, hold on, bear with me. So the sandbox right there. Okay. Just had to find the one I was talking about. I should actually mark these. Okay. So we're just going to dive into RStudio Cloud real quick and take a look at this. Be patient. It takes a second to kind of bring up the project. So if we have any questions, John David, we could probably answer one while this is spinning. Yeah, frequent repetition to retain information. Absolutely. Yeah, and that's why the project is so great, because you actually, there's something to retaining information where you actually have to go find the answer, and it's not just presented there for you. Now, the guided project is a blessing and a curse, because it's going to queue up all of the things that you have to go find. It's going to say, hey, go find this data set. Do this mathematical calculation to convert this raw data into an average, or you know, to find out the length of this trip given the start time and the end time. It walks you through that, which is, again, kind of getting through the crawl, walk, and then that's a bit more of a brisk walk, I suppose. The problem with an unguided project is it's only what you want to do. So if you have a weak point, the natural human nature is to avoid that weak point. So if you know that, hey, I kind of sucked at doing this, kind of like putting colors into my graph, the natural human instinct is not, let me go review that and incorporate that into my project. Some people do, but your natural instinct is, let me just stick to what I know and can do well and get it done. So the guided project will take you through all of the things that they taught you. Okay, so when you bring up RStudio, RStudio has 4 panes. At first, it's only going to show you 3. It highlights the console. You hit that little tile right there. And then it's going to bring up your source pane. So just super quick, I'm not here to teach you RStudio, but RStudio consists of 4 main panes. You have your source pane right here, which is where you should probably do most of your code. And then that's where you get into a little weirdness with this course that I don't entirely like, but I'll show you that in a second. Down here is the console pane. You can code in either one of these panes. The problem with the console pane is you're going to type it out and you hit enter, it executes that code. If you're doing it in the source pane, you can type it all out, you can hit enter, and it's just going to give you a space, and then you have to highlight it and either control enter or click the run button right up here to get it to go. So it's much easier and much more forgiving, and I just like the fact that it's kind of up off the bottom of your screen. You know, down here you can't create any space in the console pane, so you're always typing like way down at the bottom of your screen, which I just find irritating. Okay, over here, this is your environment and history pane. It's going to show the history of the things that you ran. It shows your variables if you've stored any. It shows your you go way too. It shows your your variables, your data frames, if you have them stored. All that sort of stuff, just kind of the history of all the work that you've done. And then down here, this is files, plots, packages. It shows your file system. If you if and when you do a visualization, it's going to show it here as the plot. If you execute code that creates a visualization, this will automatically switch to plot mode. And then here it shows your packages. I think, yeah, so it's already got the tidyverse loaded up. And tidyverse is all of these cool packages down here. Okay, so when you go into RStudio Cloud, like I said, you don't have to download the files. They're already loaded for you if you click through the link. Now, if you just go into RStudio Cloud on your own account, you're not going to see jack. But right here, this is our first lesson. And here's it's going to bring up what's called an R Markdown file, for those of you not familiar. So it can include all of these instructions right here, and all of this is not code. It won't execute. You can highlight and click run. You're just going to get an error message. What R Markdown gives you are called code chunks, and they're set off like this. You can see in this little gray highlighted area here, it's got these little tick marks, and that is a code chunk, right? So install packages tidyverse. It's going to install the tidyverse, which is already on here, but it'll do it again for you. Here's where I dislike these hands-on activities. I'm going to show you the easy button, and I don't want you to use it, okay? The hands-on activities, you should code in the console terminal, and your crawl phase is you look at this and it says install the tidyverse package. You've got it right here. Type it out. Trust me on this, type it out. If it's your first time doing these things, if you're not familiar with R, that's an extra rep. It doesn't matter that you're looking up top and you're typing down in the console pane. Just do it. It's muscle memory, okay? Now, here's the easy button now that I've told you not to use it. See this little green arrow right here? Ka-ching. And then it gives you a little fill bar, green fill bar over the left. It gives you the stop sign right there. It says it's working. And down here in your console pane, you see it executed that very line of code right there. We're installing the tidyverse packages. Installing packages takes a minute, so your little fill bar is going to take a second to run. But you can use your crawl phase just clicking these little, you should read the documentation right there, but clicking play on these code chunks and watching them execute in the console pane. I recommend that you don't do that. Type it out. It will trigger things in your brain. That tactile retention is going to trigger, and you're going to remember it better. For people that don't think it prepared you well for the project, not to keep hammering on that, but I think these are tricks that you can use to retain these concepts. And if you just type out install packages tidyverse, it's going to help you remember it a whole lot better than just clicking that little green play button. So hope that makes sense. But these hands-on activities, I mean, you can go straight through and just click. This one gets into, head concept. I can't remember what STR stands for, but glimpse, column names. These are just ways to do some kind of very basic exploratory data analysis. It's going to show you the first few lines of your code. You can see the entire set of code, or not code. It's going to show you the first few lines of your data. Mixing up my buzzwords here. And then this one is just going to show you your column names all in one chunk. The limiting factor here is the space on the screen. So this is the data set for this diamonds data set. There's just a ton of data there. And so just like an Excel spreadsheet, I mean, if you get a giant Excel spreadsheet or Google Sheets spreadsheet and you try and zoom out to see the whole thing, you're going to be looking at it in like microscopic type if you can even get it all on one screen. It's the same way here. So these are some kind of EDA functions where you can get an idea of how big your data is. And like I said, there's some glitches here. Oh, I didn't install the library. Anyway, not here to walk you step by step through the thing, but so this is RStudio Cloud, and this is how you kind of get into these things. There's a lot of good reps just in every time they kind of stress, hey, install your packages, install your libraries, view your data. Eventually you start thinking about, okay, which packages do I need? Which libraries do I need to bring up? And then they'll kind of give you less and less help on viewing your data. They'll say, hey, maybe you try the head function. Maybe you want to see the column names. So all of that super useful. And they crawl, walk, run you through how to use RStudio. And then here they start going into packages. Again, super basic. dplyr is not on there. So they go through, they don't even go through the whole tidyverse because there's a ton of packages in the tidyverse is a group of commonly used packages, which I think dplyr is in there. But anyway, they go through the handful of packages that you actually use for this course, and just show you kind of how to install and load the tidyverse and how to bring up those packages. And that one is pretty simple. And then in this fourth segment, then they're going into the tidyverse and what you're going to use with it. And that is week numero dos. Who's got questions? How do you get into Kaggle? Yeah, so just with tidyverse, it's just the handful of packages that you're actually going to use. So gets into the data, they use a lot of Palmer penguins and diamonds, maybe one other tidyverse data set. They use the cleaning functions in a later week, I think week 3. Yeah, week 3, which we're about to talk about, they get into cleaning functions. In fact, let's close this up and just move on. So they do that. ggplot2 obviously is super heavy. That's week 4 is almost all ggplot2. But yeah, it's very focused towards the basics that they need to get you ready to execute that capstone project. Christine, yes, this will be available. You can rewatch it on LinkedIn or on YouTube, whichever you like. LinkedIn, I think once it kind of slides down the page, it gets more and more difficult to find it. But yeah, YouTube's forever, and you can filter YouTube all you like. All the free projects add value and great projects from good companies. Alec, I think anything that's paid is just going to kind of pop more. Yeah, if you got paid to do it and it created business value, obviously that's always going to be more impactful. I think the thing that, and you probably know this, the thing that you're going to run into is if it creates business value, it's probably some sort of business sensitive information or proprietary information. It may involve algorithms or machine learning models that are, the intellectual property of the business. It may involve personally identifiable information. So you just wind up, anything that you do for pay in a data science or data analytics role, you're just going to be under some sort of contractual obligation, most likely, that you won't be able to show the actual project. Now, you can definitely do a good outline of it and talk about what was accomplished. So it's good to have it on your resume, especially if you can get a boss, like if you leave a job or an internship, you can get a boss to write a recommendation letter about what you did. Those are fantastic. But there's just something about being able to show a hiring manager, here's my project right here from soup to nuts. I can show you anything. I've got 50 hidden slides that show every single calculation we did and why. Here's my code. It's on GitHub. And to do that, you have to have, open source, openly available and presentable data, which means it's kind of got to be a personal project. That there are exceptions, but not many. Most businesses, they don't want their work out there for anybody. There's too much industrial espionage and identity theft and all sorts of nasty stuff that you get involved with.
All right. Well, I think that was the last question. Although we do have kind of like an ongoing saga in the chat log here about documentation. I don't know. Do you know much about documentation? It seems like Stony Vincent is an expert on this.
He is an expert on many things. I don't know anything about CRAN documentation. I have heard of it. Okay.
So yeah, so I mean, I don't know too much about RStudio, but it sounds like someone's having a hard time installing it. So it might
Okay.
be-
Yeah, nothing in this course was difficult to install. And like I said, I have not used any exotic R packages yet. Everything in here was in the tidyverse, so it's quite often used. And
Okay, so here's like the root of it all. So Allison was asking, she wanted to do case study 1 in Excel, but because the large file size, trying Power Pivot kept messing up after loading the script. Table 100 every course. Okay, so yeah, so they were just trying to help diagnose the issue there. All right. Well, I think that runs through.
And Abe's got a crayon joke.
I don't know what's with you military guys and crayons, but
It's quite specific to the Marine Corps, I assure you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know when that joke started. It wasn't around when I first joined the Marine Corps, but it's funny. Okay. All serious questions gone?
Yeah.
Yeah. Alex seems to be generating quite a few. I'm glad I invited him.
Yeah.
So, okay, we're not starting with bias data, although we'll talk about that. Trying to remember, working with data frames, I think, is where we started here. So we'll just let Carrie talk back there. Okay, so yeah, first thing they start talking about in exploring data, they start talking about data frames, working with data frames, how to upload them, creating your own. The thing you got to watch for is they don't, data frames don't automatically save. So if you create a new one, you have to actually go through the steps to save it and name it. Otherwise, when you close out RStudio, it's going to go away. Talk about Tables and just kind of how to munch down your data into a digestible form or to use it for data analysis. And again, the discussions in here kind of fall into two different annoying and useless forms. They ask you to compare two very dissimilar programs, which is limited utility to me. And then they ask you to kind of guess what's coming up, which kind of happened throughout the later lessons in this course. It's like, hey, we're about to study R. What are you excited to learn about R? What do you think you're going to learn about R? And to me, it was akin to like if you show up for the first day of physics class at college and the college professor asking you to like tell him what we're about to learn in the class, him or her. So, you know, it just seemed to me to be, they kind of decided, hey, we need discussions here because we're committed to this. So anyway, okay, so they go through the structure, the frames, the Tables, and then they're getting into cleaning. And then, so they go through kind of the basics, and then they're talking about the packages they're going to pull up, which the ones they use here, really they use Janitor. They have you load up here in Skimmer as well. But just, you know, trimming off leading and trailing spaces, formatting, data types, that sort of thing, kind of the basic cleaning steps that they've gone through throughout the course with different assets. Okay. File naming, got to have your file naming consistent. They've talked about this before. They go examples of good and bad file names. That's always useful. It's a bit dry, but anyway. And then they start getting into operators and just the different functions that you use in R. And I don't remember if it's here. But again, transforming data, going wide to long, they talk about that. And just making data more manageable and chopping it down to size where you can actually use it. Okay, so here's where I had a bit of an issue, and I think they kind of, I'm open to disagreement on this, but we start talking about data bias. When people hear data bias these days, what the hot button topic and the ethical topic is data bias that discriminates against some group or is somehow disadvantageous to somebody. the problem that you get in with the verbiage is bias is a statistical term, and bias is something you can measure, but there's nothing pernicious about it. It's not predatory against anyone. Bias in statistics only means that you have a sample that is not representative of the whole. And so you have to measure that. And there are various ways to predict that. There are various ways to measure that after the fact. Here they start talking about taking a measurement of data bias, which, like I said, involves comparing a sample to the statistics of the whole. Here, they're talking about comparing a prediction to the actual outcome. That is a completely different interpretation or form of data bias. And then they start talking about ethical considerations. Now you're talking about a data bias or something that you've done with the data that is disadvantageous to somebody. That's the ethical consideration, that somehow you have an algorithm that is predatory or that's screwing people over. So I think that in their desire to get this discussion into the course, they're being kind of clumsy and a bit misleading with what data bias is, what the ethical considerations are, and then they just sort of, here you can see it's a one-day thing, and actually it's only a couple of discussions right there, and it gets a bit clumsy, and it can be misleading for people that don't understand the concepts that they're talking about. So that was a little disappointing there at the end of week 3. It's like, I don't feel like this was an effective way to introduce what is really a couple of different important topics, but completely different topics. So that was the end of week 3. But otherwise, very worthwhile. That's the kind of the analysis heavy part of R. Although it's just kind of very basic. It's cleaning, it's little bit of sorting and filtering, but we get into more of that here in week 4. Okay. So anybody got anything to contribute on week 3? I think we got our discussion just ongoing. Neat. Okay. So week 4, we're getting into visualizations, near and dear to John David's heart. And like I said, it's a very simple task to do visualizations in R, which again is another feather in the cap for R, because for me, from what I saw in my limited exposure to Python, it's simpler to do visualizations in R than it is in Python. They start going into, how do you, within the tidyverse, within those packages, how do you do visualizations? The only thing they highlight here, although I know there's a couple different ways in R to do viz, is ggplot2. Which is the primary visualization package in R. So this first segment really is getting into the basic nuts and bolts. How do you pull up ggplot2? What are the commands that you use? And then how do you get variables onto your X and Y axis? And maybe we'll click into one of these. So that's basically a scatter plot that you can get really with one line of code. So that right there, highlighted the whole dang thing. That right there is one line of code, and that's going to yield you this scatter plot into your plot window in RStudio. So really, you can't get too much simpler than that. And basically, it just says you're going to use the ggplot package. Your data frame is going to be the penguins data frame. You're going to use a geometric point, and then your mapping, and these are your basic aesthetics. So it's not really an aesthetic consideration. It's the variables. Your x-axis is going to be your flipper length, and your y-axis is going to be your body mass. And essentially, you can look here and kind of plot a hand-jammed regression line there, and say, hey, as the penguin gets bigger, his flipper will also be longer, his or her. And then it gets much more complicated than that, but you can just see there is a pretty strong positive correlation between the size of the penguin and the length of their flippers. There's your visualization, if that was your scientific question to answer. So I won't completely bore you by actually taking you through ggplot2 and how to put that together, but you can see one line of code, it's super simple. How do vizzes in R differ from those in more visualization-driven package programs like PBI or Tableau? Obviously, Hunter, you've got to write code. There is another, there's more steps involved in exporting it, but really it's fairly comparable when you think about how you export something from Tableau or Power BI, assuming you're not going to stand there with a clicker and a projector and present directly from Tableau. You've got to get it into something that you can present to an audience. So you're usually talking about putting it either into an Adobe file or a PowerPoint, and it's fairly similar. It's not significantly more complicated. Again, you have to know a handful of commands. This course provides you with the official ggplot2 cheat sheet, which you can just check back to it. So really, it doesn't take much longer than it does just to kind of muscle memory and discovery learning through how to swipe things left to right in Tableau. The vizzes themselves, they're pretty comparable. I mean, they're pretty. Okay. Yeah. I mean, you do calculations in R as well, and within that deliver straight into your visualization. So again, in my limited exposure to both programs, I've seen nothing that you could only do in one or the other. It's just a question of how complicated it is in each and what they're designed to do. Bias goes beyond data sampling, unbalanced data, which could be representative of a population. Yeah, I don't know what your Alexander, I'm guessing. Okay, that is, got it, unbalanced data. That just means your data set has characteristics that you need to account for. But that's not, I'd be interested to see your definition of bias that addresses that. If you're talking about, this course gets into Anscombe's quartet, but it's not, the statistical definition of bias does not address that. It's something that you need to be aware of, but the sample that you pull from that is not biased. And my argument against people that say, well, data is biased, or, in the kind of lowercase b non-statistical definition of bias, that it's biased against people. Data is not biased. Numbers are just numbers. If you need to go beyond a random sample in trying to get an accurate picture of the data, then you just haven't, your analysis was just insufficient. So anyway, yeah, be open for that discussion. But, and maybe I need to bust out my old stats textbooks to refresh my own memory. But yeah, they talk about Anscombe's quartet in this course. And really it's just, for those that don't remember, it's a set of, a group of 4 data sets for which the summary statistics are more or less identical. So, mean, mode, median, standard deviation, all of these things are, if you look at just the summary stats, you would say these data sets are identical. If you then plot them, you can see that, one set of data is just ramrod straight, perfect correlation. One is kind of, the picture of heteroscedasticity. This is a big curve. One is kind of all over the place, and then there's just outliers all over the map. So, Yeah, absolutely. But as far as I recall, the dictionary definition of bias, that's not bias. That's you need to go further than a random sample in understanding your data set. All right, so what are we on? Aesthetics. Okay, so in aesthetics, they really start getting into how to make the picture a little more pretty. And let me see, I did not pull out one. Try this one here. So pull up another RStudio Cloud, and this gets into how do you incorporate color in your plot? How do you change the shapes? How do you put labels on your plot so it's a little easier to read? How do you categorize it? So it starts getting into sorting and filtering within ggplot. How do you, and with the Palmer Penguins data set, somebody really wants to talk to me. Within the Palmer Penguins data set, there are 3 different species of penguin. And how do you kind of separate that out within the plot without messing with it? And then how do you tile the plot to get one graph per species? We are in week 4. And this one is the aesthetics and visualizations. Let's go right there. Okay. So we are just going to hit the easy button after I told you not to do that. Nope, the hotel bookings. Great. Okay. Well, we'll see how this works out. Okay, exploratory data analysis, got it. And then we're going to make a bar chart. Nope, that didn't work. It didn't load ggplot. Anyway, so that's a massive fail. Closing that out. All right. Anyway, aesthetics, take my word for it. You're going to make little plots and graphs. Maybe it's in one of the, okay. So some of it can show you how to insert a smoothing line. Some of them are ramrod straight, basically a regression line. Yeah, so unfortunately I'm not showing us any pictures here, and I did not do good enough prep for this to demonstrate it properly. But and then they're going into how do you annotate and save your visualizations, which can be quite challenging right off the bat, because it looks very nice in your RStudio, and then you realize you don't know how to save it external. It saves in a weird picture file format, so you have to use a function called ggsave to get it out and get it into a presentation or something that you can show to your boss. And there is a segment here where you, right here, they talk about creating a profile on the Coursera job platform. Like I said, there needs to be some quality control on this course. This task right here is create your profile on the Coursera job platform. Unfortunately, in order to do that and put data analyst on there, you have to have completed this course. Well, we're in 2/3 of the way through lesson number 7. So yeah, that was a bit irritating, and something that should have been screened out in quality control. But anyway, minor gripes, like I said. And that is week 4 on your visualization. So Carrie's talking, and week 5 is going to be how to develop documentation and reports. And this is huge for getting your project done. It's going to teach you how to use R Markdown, which is a file format for making dynamic documents within R. So R Markdown is a variation on the language, or perhaps it's its own language, I don't remember. But it shows basically those easy buttons, those code chunks, and then the narrative through that. It shows you how to develop that for yourself. When people have their projects in GitHub, a lot of times they've written that up in R Markdown and put it in a notebook and for people to take a look at. And so you can take it and execute the code yourself and check it out. So anyway, just there's not a lot of sexy stuff to show here. It shows you how to create your own R Markdown documents, shows you how to embed code chunks in there and export them out, and that is it. And then, yeah, I honestly believe that once you complete this, and once you've got your R Markdown primer, you're ready to execute that project. And if you want to execute the capstone project all in R, that is easily doable. If you want to execute it all in a spreadsheet function, that's pretty doable as well, although they don't teach you a ton about visualizations in spreadsheets in here. So I would say you might be a bit lacking there. That might be somewhere you got to find an external asset. But that is it. Lesson 7 is excellent. Like it, you know, it really was only a couple of things that I found a gripe with. Yeah, and just beware the final test. There is an entire question where the code doesn't work, and there was nothing I could do to get it to work. When I submitted the test, I got the question wrong, and I went back and reviewed, and the code that I wrote was identical to what the textbook answer was. But just kind of be on the lookout for that. There are a couple different things in the hands-on activities that you do. They're not graded in RStudio. When you go through and you do the hands-on activity, there's going to be a work check at the end of it. So when you exit out of RStudio, there's a multiple choice question on that hands-on activity or the quiz that's going to say, hey, what was the outcome of this equation or this variable, or how many columns did this data frame have? So it's just a check on learning, and you have to actually complete the thing in order to get that answer. Now, once again, you can complete the hands-on learning by just clicking the play button on every code chunk, but that's how that works out. But yeah, the test, there's a whole portion that I couldn't get it to work. So I'd be very curious to see someone else that's completed this course. Did you find those same glitches that I did, or was just something that it wasn't cooperating with me?
All right. So what's your overall rating out of a 10? 10 out of 10? 9 out of 10?
I'll give it, out of 10, I'd give it a 9.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good. So that's a huge improvement over, like we were talking about, the Tableau one. But
yeah.
Cool. So we are an hour and 32 minutes into the live stream. Do you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I would just say I just encourage, the people that are asking, the barrage of questions never stops on what's the best way to get into data analytics? How do I find projects? Where do I find data? This course answers all of those questions to a reasonable extent, which I think was the advertisement going through was, this is going to prep you for day one as a junior data analyst. You're going to walk in saying, I can do some queries, I can do some coding, I can do some visualization, and you can. So, and I think this is just sort of the capstone of that instruction that, you know enough coding to be dangerous at the end of lesson 7, and you know where to find assets to teach you the rest, and you know exactly what you don't know. So, Alexander's back.
All right, you want to pull it in?
Sure.
Talking about bias.
Okay. Yeah, I'll go back and take a look.
And then we got Stoney has been super active this entire hour and a half. So Stoney.
So just going back to Alexander real quick, I would just say that in this section and there was an earlier section of the course where they tried to take misclassified data or a statistical bias of some sort and lump that in with ethics, and lump that in with kind of a predatory bias, or something like the present furor over police algorithms unfairly targeting minority people. That is a predatory bias. That's something that there's an algorithm that's been developed that is self-reinforcing, that that is targeting vulnerable people. To me, if you misclassify your data, that is different from where they try and lump that together with an ethical concern. Because there's plenty of misclassified data that implies no ethical concern. It implies, if you misclassify the data, your ass is getting fired as a data analyst because you suck and you led the business to an erroneous conclusion or a venture that doesn't work out because of your terrible analysis. Or you've got a survey that that doesn't show an accurate sampling, or you fail to predict the results of an election or something like that. So there's plenty of bias that does not imply any kind of ethical consideration. There's plenty of misclassification and misinterpretation of data that has nothing to do with ethics. And so to kind of lump the two together and say this is part and parcel of the same issue, maybe not. But I think that people that don't, and this course does not teach you statistics in any way, shape, or form. And so I think people that have a kind of tenuous grasp of statistics will see biased data and think, oh, this is a predatory bias. This is something that is going to cause, the wrong people to get locked up for the wrong crimes. The two are not necessarily even related, and there are plenty of those predatory algorithms out there, the weapons of math destruction, that were not developed out of ignorance or out of just misclassifying data. It's an overgeneralization. That there's deliberate bias worked in there. And to me, those are the ethical considerations. So I think it's important to be careful with the words we're using to separate two very different considerations. And I think the way that Google presented it in this course is a bit mean to call it irresponsible, but I thought it was a bit misleading.
Awesome. All right. So we got Stoney and his stamp of approval. Well, this was good.
Thanks for sticking it out all the way, Stoney and Allison. I appreciate it. I know you guys were having a good tete-a-tete going there in the chat, which is great too. But
yeah, it's interesting how there's like multiple conversational threads going on top of what we're talking about.
Allison, hey, look us up on LinkedIn. I'm pretty sure I'm not connected to you, but we'd love to keep the conversation going, whatever you want to talk about.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, I guess we've been rattling on for nearly an hour and 40 minutes. Yeah, well, I mean, I guess it'll be me, you, and can you make the live stream on Friday?
Don't know.
So it's going to be me rattling on Friday. So they're going to get a nice balance. So check out, we are having a live stream with Analyze with Ali, which is a YouTube channel, and he does all types of analytics work. He's based out of Oslo, Norway, which is interesting. But I think he is a senior analyst, might even be in management, but he has blown up recently on his analytics portfolio review videos. So tune in on Friday, check that out. Nice. And we'll see you guys then. Thanks for tuning in, and thank you, Al, for all your time and effort and your gift to gab. It's been great.
Yeah. I try.
Bye.